Gopinath ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Gaura Premanande. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guruhu Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Nivrita Tarshe Rupagiyamanat Bhavo Shadachrotra Manobhiramat Kauttama Shloka Gunanuvadat Puman Virajyeta Vinapashugnat. Glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is performed in the Parampara system. That is, it is conveyed from spiritual master to disciple. Such glorification is relished by those no longer interested in the false, temporary glorification of this cosmic manifestation. Descriptions of the Lord are the right medicine for the conditioned soul undergoing repeated birth and death. Therefore, who will cease hearing such glorification of the Lord except a butcher or one who is killing his own self? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we're studying from Canto 4, Chapter 25, and the text number is 27, the characteristics of King Puranjana. Ka ete nupathayata ekadashamaha bataha etava lalanaha subhru koyam te hihi purha saraha ka ete nupathayeta ekadasha mahabataha etava lalanaha subhru koyam tehi purha sharaha ka ete nupathayeta ekadasha mahabhataha etava lalanaha subhru koyam tehi purha saraha. Prabhuji's. Ka ete nupathayeta ekadasha mahabhataha etava lalanaha subhru ka ete nupathayeta ekadasha mahabhataha etava lalanaha subhru koyam tehi purha saraha. Mataji's. Ka ete nupathayeta ekadasha mahabhataha etava lalanaha subhru koyam tehi purha saraha. Ka ete nupathayeta ekadasha mahabhataha etava lalanaha subhru koyam tehi purha sharaha. Ka ete nupathayeta ekadasha mahabhataha etava lalanaha subhru koyam tehi purha saraha. Word for word equivalents. Ke, who, ete, all these, anupataha, followers, ye, they who, te, your, ekadasha, 11, mahabhataha, very powerful bodyguards, etaha, all of these, va, also, lalanaha, women, subhru, O beautiful eyed one, kaha, who, ayam, this, te, your, Ahihi, the snake. Puruha, in front. Saraha, going. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. My dear lotus-eyed, who are those 11 strong bodyguards with you? And who are those 10 specific servants? Who are those women following the 10 servants? And who is the snake that is preceding you? Please repeat. My dear lotus-eyed, who are those 11 strong bodyguards with you? And who are those 10 specific servants? Who are those women following the 10 servants? And who is the snake that is preceding you? Purport, please hear. The 10 strong servants of the mind are the 5 working senses and the 5 knowledge-gathering senses. All these 10 senses work under the aegis of the mind. The mind and the 10 senses combine to become 11 strong bodyguards. The hundreds of women under the jurisdiction of the senses are addressed here as Lalanaha. The mind works under the intelligence, and under the mind are the 10 senses. And under the 10 senses are innumerable desires to be fulfilled. All these, however, depend on the vital force, which is here represented by the snake. As long as the vital force is there, the mind works. And under the mind, the senses work. And the senses give rise to so many material desires. Actually, the living entity known as Puranjana is embarrassed by so much paraphernalia. All this paraphernalia simply constitutes different sources of anxiety. But one who is surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead and who leaves all business to Him is freed from such anxieties. Therefore, Prahlad Maharaj advises a person who has taken to the materialistic way of life, which is never permanent but always temporary, to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and leave aside all his so-called responsibilities in order to get free from all anxieties. So welcome to the Bhagavatam class. It's so nice to be encouraged and blessed by your association. We're very fortunate that we're discussing this very nice episode that occurs between Narada Muni, who mercifully is teaching by analogy, King Prachina Barishat, who is a descendant of Narada Muni's dear disciple. Who's the dear disciple that he is a descendant of? Dhruv Maharaj, yes. We'll do Bodha Yanta Parasparam. We'll converse. It'll be a bit interactive today. And that way we can encourage each other. So the problem, of course, was that King Barishat was trying to find happiness in the material world. So it's very relevant to us because basically that's our problem as well. So the 11 bodyguards are there, and they're consisting of, what do they represent? One of them, I'll give you one. One is the mind, and there are 5 working senses, and there are 5 knowledge-acquiring senses. So the knowledge-acquiring senses, of course, are, yes, so sight, touch, taste, smell, sound. Very good. And then you have the working senses, which are the karma indriya. So this is like the hands, the legs, the voice, the mouth, and the anus and the genitals. So these are what they represent from these 11 bodyguards that are there. So we can remember from Bhagavad Gita very nicely, the picture is given in our Bhagavad Gita. You have the picture of the 5 horses, you can all recall, representing the senses. And then the mind is the driver steering the senses. And in the best course of affairs, in the most ideal situation, the intelligence is guiding the mind. And above all this is the living entity, which is the vital life force. And that, in this analogy, is represented by the snake. Very good. So this is like the basic. And the issue is that it's meant to go, if you look at the picture, left to right. You know, the mind and the reins and the horses are under control. But unfortunately, there are innumerable desires and it goes from right to left. Then we have mayhem. So we'll discuss that further. So, the fruitive activities that are carried out by King Prachina Barhishat, even if they are pious. So he's a good king, he may be doing fruitive activities, and it may be pious type of activity. You know, it's good work that he's doing. Even if they are pious, the problem is, Narada Muni says, they don't solve anything. The basic fundamental issues, Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, they're not going to be solved by doing that. But everyday life tells us that, yes, if you live a good life, it's okay. You don't have to do anything more than that. You know, just live a good life and do some good deeds and she'll be right. So this is like the senses being controlled by the innumerable desires to be fulfilled. And here, Lalanaha, 100 women, multiple desires. And unfortunately, instead of the chariot driver driving the horses are in charge. And this leads to a couple of things happening. The horses may go in the wrong direction. And if the horses decide not to go in the same wrong direction, they go in different directions, and there's absolute mayhem. You can just imagine. So, Puranjana's story is actually King Prachina Barhishat's story in allegory, in like an example. And it's actually our story. So this is very highly applicable. And the name Puranjana, of course, is very apt, as we know, because Puranja means a soul who attempts to enjoy in a material body. So that's like, yeah, my name's there. A soul who attempts to enjoy in a material body. So the question itself asked by Puranjana in this verse, this particular verse, actually is a continuation from the previous verse. It exemplifies a higher intelligence about one's true identity. So the human form of life is meant for such inquiry. So he's asking questions. That's what we should do. Generally speaking, the majority of people in material life, they're not going to ask these questions. Atato Brahma Jignasa. So now, Atato, therefore, we have come to Brahma Jignasa. We have come to the platform of inquiry about Brahma, the supreme absolute truth, Krishna. So it is said that once we come to ask this question, then we are actually a human being. Because if we don't ask that question, then we are just on the animal platform. So eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. Just basic, keep everything together. And our scriptures tell us that this is not enough. This is not enough. And this will not give satisfaction. So this is a good thing to make such inquiries. And mostly in material life, it doesn't go beyond that. And it's a nice approach. In the early parts of this chapter, it's a good example for us that sometimes we may be discussing this and you can go head on, right? You can go head on with someone, you do this, you do that, you do this. And that's a little bit confrontational. But Narada Muni, being the perfect spiritual master, knows that if I go head on, maybe it could upset him a little bit. So he takes the route of allegory. And this is a very good technique. Like, you know, if you want to keep someone on side, but the message might be a little bit hard, then, you know, try the allegory, you know. But what if someone were to do this, this is what might happen. And then that way we can keep people on side. And our preaching and our discussion can be on the platform of mercy and love, as opposed to, yeah, I'm gonna show you. So that doesn't help much anyone. So, what is the result of the uncontrolled action of the senses? What is the result of the uncontrolled action of the senses? Now, Srila Prabhupada makes a 5-word statement. Does anyone know what Prabhupada says is the result of the uncontrolled action of the senses? What happens? What happens? repeated birth and death. Let's quote Prabhupada. Let's go to the purport. Quote, embarrassed by so much paraphernalia. Very nicely selected words. Embarrassed by so much paraphernalia. So if we have an uncontrolled action of the senses, the person who does that is going to be embarrassed by so much paraphernalia. Now, we have to look at Prabhupada's words. They're very carefully selected for our benefit. So let's examine that profound statement in the context of today's life. What are some examples of this embarrassment? Does anyone just look around? What can you give me some examples of this embarrassment? Tricky question. Now, where's he heading with this? Oh, in general. So much advertising, very nice. Like, what's the motive there? Yeah, very nice. And profit motive, an underlying profit motive. Dollars and cents. So there's a lot of advertising. I'll help you here. There is the rise of misinformation and artificial intelligence. There was someone who was admitted to a hospital and he was having hallucinations and the doctors couldn't figure out what was going on. Suddenly they figured out this gentleman had gone on to ChatGPT and decided that he's not going to have salt, he's going to have sodium bromide. Right, because ChatGPT said so. And then he had hallucinations. That was the reason for his hallucinations. So this is what's happening. We see it a lot, like ChatGPT. Before it used to be Google, now it's ChatGPT or any manner. And the problem is there's misinformation. Like it's a tool, but we don't know what's right or not. One time I decided, okay, I'm going to feed something to ChatGPT for Bhagavatam class. Let's see what it comes up with. And then this beautiful verse came up, and I go, wow, I've never seen that verse before. And then I looked for this verse. I couldn't find it. And then I said to ChatGPT, I can't find this verse. Where did you get this from? And it said, summating everything together, I came up with this verse. I said, well, that's not very honest, is it? And it says, oh, I guess it's not. Well, I said, well, you shouldn't do that, should you? And so we know that this misinformation is there. Unless you really know what you're doing, what to speak of the lawyers that are in trouble, they're citing cases and getting in trouble. So rise of misinformation is there, right? And then, of course, we have escalating political tensions. 1 week it's this place, next week it's Greenland, next week it's probably Australia. Who knows who's going to take over who, right? So there's also another problem, vast economic disparity. Big difference in terms of the distribution of income and wealth. Big difference. And of course, there is the erosion of social bonds. People are lonely. People are anxious. So this is happening. So this something that is happening, especially in the last few years, has been described as a vibe shift. A shift in vibration. I don't know if you've heard of it. Vibe shift. Definition of that is a profound transformation of the fabric of society itself. And we'd all agree, like it seems to be getting crazier and crazier. Like, people are saying, well, we don't want to go down AI because it's going to cause trouble. And I remember I used to think life was very simple before. Now it's getting increasingly complex. So there's the rise of misinformation, AI, political tensions. So these are examples of us being embarrassed. Like we've become technologically extremely advanced, but really it's a situation of embarrassment. I mean, you walk in the street, everyone's like down here, right? They're down here. And I think that with evolution, we're going to be stuck down there. So no one talks to anyone. People don't know how to talk. Like they don't know how to communicate. I see it a lot every day. So in Stoic philosophy, this philosopher, Bridget Delaney, describes it as a, quote, deep, unsettling change in our collective reality. So this is like summarizing the real problem, a deep, unsettling change in our collective reality. And we'll all agree that, if anyone is introspective, it's a problem. We've got big problems. So Srila Prabhupada's statement, embarrassed by so much paraphernalia, is deeply relevant to our predicament, deeply relevant to what's happening today. And then immediately, Prabhupada does this so nicely, he gives a problem But then just for our benefit, we're going, oh my God, what do I do? Prabhupada gives the solution very nicely, and this is a really important point. Prabhupada says, and I'll quote, all this paraphernalia simply constitutes different sources of anxiety, but one who is surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead and who leaves all business to Him is freed from such anxieties. So really, almost worth memorizing that line. I'll repeat it again. All this paraphernalia simply constitutes different sources of anxiety, but one who is surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead and who leaves all business to Him is freed from such anxieties. Solution. So, in this connection, let's unpack that a little bit more. Srimad Bhagavatam gives a very beautiful verse, 3.7.14. So please repeat after me. Ashesha sanklesha, ashesha sanklesha, samam vidatte, gunanuvada, shravanam murare. Kimva punastach charanaravindha paragaseva ratir atmalabdhe. So the first two lines, if you can't remember the whole verse, the first two lines are really helpful. So ashesha sanklesha, how does it relate to today? Ashesha means unlimited. Sanklesha means miserable conditions. So we've just described the miserable conditions. We've just understood from these verses there are hundreds and hundreds of desires and the horses are going in mayhem. So Ashesha Sanklesha, that is our situation. Now what do we want to do? We want to stop them quickly. Samam, which means stopping, and Vidate means effecting that stoppage. So Ashesha Sanklesha Samam Vidate. We want to stop those unlimited miseries as quickly as possible. And how to do that? Second line tells us, Gunanuvada Shravanam Murare. So this is easy, very easy. Guna is meaning the qualities. So we, of the names, transcendental names, form, qualities, pastimes, entourage, and paraphernalia. Hearing about that and chanting. Shravanam is not given just in this verse the translation of hearing. Prabhupada says chanting as well. So hearing and chanting of who? Murare. That's Krishna. So we got the solution there very nicely. And as people who may be in contact with devotional service, maybe for a long time, we hear it again and again, but it's very easy to forget this point of how powerful this process is. So then, third and fourth lines, then what to speak of? Kimva punastach charanaravinda, the lotus feet of Krishna, someone who has ratir atma labde, who has developed a personal attraction for what? Paraga seva, to the service of the flavorful dust of the lotus feet of Krishna. What to speak of that person? So this verse is a beautiful verse. So Prabhupada says, simply by chanting and hearing of the transcendental name, form, etc. of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, one can achieve the cessation of unlimited miserable conditions. Therefore, what to speak of those who have attained attraction for serving the flavor of the dust of the Lord's lotus feet? So the two verses are divided into the first process of devotional service, which is devotional service in practice. Sadhana bhakti or Vaidhi bhakti, our hearing, our chanting. And then the second half is spontaneous attraction to Krishna's lotus feet. This is what we're aspiring to. Not because we have to get up at 4:30 in the morning because someone will shout at us or whatever. It's actually like, oh yes, I want to get up. It's spontaneous attraction, and that is raga bhakti. This is the spontaneous, loving sentiment towards Krishna, not out of duty. So Srila Prabhupada states in relation to this, by practicing sadhana bhakti, one may gradually rise to the point of raga bhakti. So again, answered our question. Your question was, oh, I'm in sadhana bhakti, or I'm trying to be in sadhana bhakti. How do I get to that stage? So Prabhupada answered it. That this process is by practicing sadhana bhakti, we can get there. And by performing raga bhakti in loving transcendental service, one can even control the Supreme Powerful Lord. It's a big, big promise. So as we have no understanding now, this is all, again, still a bit theoretical, of how profoundly effective this process is in extinguishing this blazing fire of material existence, then our acharyas give us further clues in this regard. You know, how is it possible? You know, you've got miseries and I've got a sore toe. And how is chanting going to help my sore toe, right? Or my headache, or whatever. Like, you know, you can't be real, Prabhu. Get real. So, let's look to a very nice example. In Golok, Vrindavan, love for Krishna or Krishna Prema, to which we aspire, intensifies to even higher stages. Now, one of these stages is called pranaya. So in the Ujjvala Nilamani by Srila Rupa Goswami, he explains what this raga is, this devotional service that's spontaneous and having a real connection with Krishna. Let's hear from Rupa Goswami. He says, when pranaya reaches a high state and suffering is removed by happiness in the heart on meeting Krishna, it is called raga. So the suffering is removed by happiness in the heart on meeting Krishna. So Srila Rupa Goswami says, okay, that's still theoretical. Let me give you an example. His example is beautiful, very beautiful. I'll quote. Remaining on the slope, covered with piles of sharp-edged uneven sunstones, heated by intense rays of the sun at noon. Radha, joyfully gazing at the prince of cowherds, remains motionless as if standing with her feet on a bed of blue lotuses. So Radharani is giving the example. It's possible. The stones are very hot, but she's waiting for Krishna. And we can see that these stones that are hot are like blue lotuses. So it's possible. So all this is contained in that single statement of Srila Prabhupada. All that is contained in that single. What was the statement? All this paraphernalia simply constitutes different sources of anxiety. But one who is surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead and who leaves all business to Him is freed from such anxieties, freed from such suffering. So Prabhupada's words are carefully chosen. It's just a question of us diving deeper into it. So, what about this is another point in that, leave all business to Him. That's a nice one. Leave all business to Him. Leave all business to Krishna. Leave all business to Radha Gopinath. It frees one from anxieties. And this is certainly a very powerful way to be freed from anxieties, if we leave all business to Krishna. So in Sharanagati, Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives us the clue of the 6 components of surrender. And there are 2 components in that we can draw upon when we're trying to understand of how leaving the business to Krishna helps our anxieties. The 2 components are thinking that Krishna is my maintainer, and thinking that Krishna will surely protect me, my protector. I'll give you the other 6 because there's an easy way to remember it. I use the word hammer. We've got to hammer it in our head, right? So the other ones are H for humility, and then A for Atma Nivedana, surrendering to Krishna. M for Krishna is my protector. Another M for Krishna is my maintainer. And the E stands for execute those things favorable for devotional service, and the R stands for reject those things that are not favorable for devotional service. So we've got to hammer it in our head. Easy way to remember, hammer. So let's get it even more real. Let's see an example of how we can leave the business to Radha Gopinath. Now take this nice excerpt. It's from the Great Transcendental Adventure. This is his race, Kurma Prabhu. And I'll quote. He writes, Kurma Das Prabhuji writes, Shri Shri Radha Gopinath were brought to Australia to strengthen the devotees and to more solidly establish his movement here. And Prabhupada loved these deities. They had presided over the Bombay Pandal, and when they hadn't been on stage, Prabhupada had kept them in his room where he could look at them during the day. Prabhupada knew that the devotees in Sydney were not up to the standard for worshipping Radha and Krishna. He knew he was taking a risk, entrusting their worship to neophyte disciples. As he stood before the deities of Radha Gopinath with folded hands, Prabhupada silently submitted an extraordinary request. Now I am leaving you in the hands of the mlechas. I cannot take responsibility. You please guide these boys and girls and give them intelligence to worship you nicely. So Prabhupada is leaving the business to Radha Gopinath. So if it's good enough for Prabhupada, it's good enough for us. It's a nice practical thing we can think of. And the more we do this, we can get a practical experience that yes, definitely ashesha sanklesha samam vidate. Leave the business to Krishna. He'll look after it. But if we don't do that, Krishna doesn't come. We've got to do it properly. Mother Draupadi found that out because when she was in the Kaurava assembly and she was being disrobed, she still had one hand on her sari while she was being disrobed by Dushasana, I think it was. And until that hand was still holding, Krishna didn't come. And then she surrendered. Hey Govinda, 2 hands off. Oh, now she needs my help. She surrendered. So if we kind of go, yeah, let's keep the hand on the sari or the dhoti, then Krishna not coming. Because he said, okay, let Prabhu, let Mataji, let them try. That's fine. But the moment we surrender, then Krishna takes over. Now, let's go on to the idea of the senses and controlling the senses, because remember, they're the horses with mayhem, right? So the best way to get the senses under control, we can understand, you know this famous verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, and also in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.1.12. Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tarat tatparatvena nirmalam hrishikesha sevanam bhakti ruchyate. So bhakti or devotional service means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of the senses. When the spirit soul renders such service unto the Supreme, there are 2 side effects. One is freed from all material designations, and one's senses are purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. So we can understand that these horses that are under not in our control, they're absolute mayhem. What are we going to do? And His Holiness Swayam Bhagavan Keshav Maharaj has a nice, very nice series. He talks about the way we can do this is we have connection with spiritual people, with spiritual knowledge, spiritual sounds, spiritual places, and spiritual forms. So that's like, oh, how am I going to remember that? So of course it's from Nectar of Instruction. So now if we put it like, let's make it like ABC. So ABC is ABCD squared. Let's think of it that way. So A is spiritual people, association. B is for Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, spiritual knowledge. C is for chanting, spiritual sounds. D is for Dham, the Dham, Vrindavan Dham. Vrindavan Dham is here because Radha Gopinath are here. So we're in a spiritual place. And the final D is deity worship, spiritual forms, D squared. So easy way to remember that when the senses are going off, remember our ABCD squared. If we don't remember that, why is it not happening? Why I'm not feeling? Because when ABCD squared is like low charge. We've got to charge it up. So in this way, those side effects can be counteracted simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. Our senses can be engaged in those ABCD squared. So I'll summarize today's discussion, and then maybe we have some chance for some comments and corrections. Please give us corrections. So, first point, the Guru Parampara is merciful and skillful in assisting the fallen souls from material entanglement. That's Narada Muni. Narada Muni. He exemplifies and represents the Guru Parampara. He's very mercifully coming to King Prachina Barishit. This employment of analogy as a teaching method is an example of intelligent preaching and Vaishnava compassion. It's very important to remember to be compassionate, and Narada Muni exemplifies that. The living entity is embarrassed, important word, embarrassed, by so many material desires after which the senses run rampant. This certainly leads to embarrassment, frustration, and is powerfully a force in today's vibe shift environment, as we discussed. Understanding that point and making an inquiry into the science of the self, or Atma Tattva, is a necessary quality for the spirit soul in humility to begin to make progress in spiritual life. That's an important point, because we think, some of us may think, I'm initiated, done, excellent, tick it off the list. But initiate actually means you initiate, you do it again, you begin it again, you do it every day. So daily and repeatedly, it's an ongoing process of quality improvement. So it's a nice thing to contemplate that we need to keep pushing ourselves and perhaps even out of our comfort zone in order to serve Radha Gopinath. Chanting and hearing about Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is actually the practical method for the mitigation of countless miseries. Ashesha Sanklesha Samam Vidatte. And Srimati Radharani is the epitome of such attraction to Krishna. And finally, surrendering our business and our senses to Krishna is therefore the key process to employ in an everyday sense, in a practical sense, in order to be free from such anxiety. So I'll finish there. It's a really good verse to contemplate today in this series. It's very nice. Prabhupada uses the word, this is an interesting way that Narada Muni is approaching it. Prabhupada used the word interesting, that he's taken this approach of analogy to teach and thereby benefit us. So are there any comments, questions? Yes, Prabhuji. Absolutely. Yes, so whatever we're doing, we're connecting with Krishna. Because Bhagavatam 2.9.33 says, Rite artham yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta chatmani tadvidyadatmano mayam yatha baso yatha tamaha. The statement given in one of the seed verses of Bhagavatam is that Krishna says to Lord Brahma that know that anything only has value if it is in relation to me. So we all know that if we are engaged in this, as this verse, just doing our material activity, as is the problem with King Barishat, he's just doing his material activity, there is no Krishna added to that. So the nice analogy is given. These are all like zeros. Our bank balance, our house, our family, our intellectual capacity, all of these are actually no value. But Krishna is like 1. You put 1 in front of 0, it becomes 10. 1 in front of 2 zeros becomes 100, etc., 1,000. So Krishna is like 1. We must have Krishna added to this for it to have any value. Otherwise it has no meaning. In fact, Kunti Maharani prays that all these attributes we have, Janma Aishwarya Shruta Shribhir Edamana Madaha Puman Nevar Hati Abidatumbe Twam Kinchana Gocharam. She's saying that you won't be able to chant Krishna's name feelingly if you have excellent parentage, Janma, Aishwarya, you're very rich, Shruta, you're very knowledgeable, Shribhir, you're very beautiful. So if you just have all of this, they're actually blocks. Because what are they? Edamana, Madha, Puman. They are intoxicating us. Because we think we're so good and we forget Krishna. So yes, we must engage these things according to our, shall we say, insofar as our intelligence allows. Think, how can we engage what we may have in Krishna's service? Then it will have meaning. Yes, very nice point, Prabhuji. Thank you. Yes, Prabhuji. This is a nice question. How do we know if we are actually surrendering? How do we know if we're holding back or not? So there's, in this devotional pathway, my spiritual master said something really nice. He said that, for example, you're doing some service, and the public are there. He said it's like a cook. The public will come and have honor prasadam, but they don't need to be an expert chef to know if the salt is less or more. So similarly, if we are sincere with ourselves, truly sincere, we know if we're holding back or not. We can tell. Because, and of course Krishna can tell. Krishna's not interested in what's here. He's interested in what's over here. So we can tell. And then of course we can seek counsel of the devotees. Because they can guide us, like King Puranjan has done. He said he actually surrenders to Narada Muni. So it's not actually like he's antagonistic towards being discussing transcendental knowledge. He actually does surrender. So he's like receptive. So in that mood, if we are receptive to the mercy of the Vaishnavas, then they can tell us, and like who is Atman Vedana? I mean, who is like Ambarish Maharaj, Save Manaha Krishna Padaravindayo, and like he's an awesome example. Like he's a king in charge of everything, and yet he takes time to smell the tulsi leaves offered to Krishna, even though he has all these kingly responsibilities, and that's celebrated in Bhagavatam. So no, we can't do that, and it's a good question we have to ask ourselves. Like, how do we know? There's always something we're holding back. We're not fully surrendered, but if we're holding back, then we can use our hammer, for example. We can see, are we being humble? Are we thinking that Krishna is my protector and my maintainer? When we think that way, we feel the results, then we know, yes, I was in that particular second. Practically speaking, you may be engaged in some business and you really want something to work out, or it might be at work with your boss. You really want something to work out. And that intensity is based upon the fact that we're still holding on. But if we say, look, I'm going to do whatever I need to do, but now, Krishna, I know and I trust you will do the right thing for me, then we will actually feel that anxiety lift. And the second thing is then we may not know it at the time, but we trust the principle. But later on, when we look back, we'll go, Krishna. So we trust Krishna. We trust that we see Krishna's plan behind it, but then later on we see Krishna's hand. So trust Krishna, but later on we will see his hand. That he did, Krishna, that was you. I didn't get it at the time, So countless, and that's only a question if we have that vision that we're going to, His Holiness Bhakti Charan Maharaj said a nice point. Someone was in the temple some years ago and was challenging Maharaj, what do you mean God, etc. What do you mean about this? He said, you're not looking properly. A plant produces carbon dioxide. Produces oxygen as a waste product, right? And who benefits from that waste product? We do. We benefit from oxygen. What do we produce as our waste product? Carbon dioxide. What does the plant need? Carbon dioxide. Can't you see Krishna in that? We don't have the capacity. We're not using our intelligence to see that Krishna is there. So is that okay? Yeah. Good question. How can I surrender? How do I know I'm surrendering? Yes, probably. Yeah, that's a very good question. When do we know when we're trying very hard to please Radha Gopinath and things are just not seeming to work out? Now, how do we know how much we should push? And when do we know that we should just stop? So in this situation, we know that in this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution. It says in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says. So we keep Krishna's not interested in the results. Krishna is interested in our effort, our endeavor. So it doesn't matter. Remember, the bridge was being built, to Lanka, and the squirrel is putting a little rock, and the monkey, what are you doing? Come on. But Lord Ram appreciated, no, this is beautiful. He's making an effort. So regardless of the outcome, so rather than being sort of outcomes oriented, whole Bhagavad Gita is telling you, don't be outcomes oriented, just do your service, because that, Prabhupada in one of the purports says very nicely, someone cleaning the toilets in the temple is equivalent to doing deity worship. In Krishna's eyes, they're on the absolute platform and it doesn't matter. So whether we are successful or not, it doesn't matter. But the fact that we're making it. Now, the intelligence comes in is that we want to maximize the benefit to Krishna. It might be a festival we're putting on or doing something, and we want to be intelligent about it to serve the devotees coming, serve the bhaktas that are coming. So we need to still exercise, not like, I'm just going to sit there and, 2 weeks later the pandal still isn't up. That's not intelligent devotional service. So, intelligence should be there. So we exercise our intelligence and decide what is going to be the best, and we're going to make mistakes, and we seek guidance from Krishna, because Krishna is within the heart. And it says in Bhagavad Gita, from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So Krishna will give us the intelligence. We just have to open ourselves. Krishna, what is your plan? And when we say, Krishna, what is your plan? We're surrendering to him. Then Krishna will guide us. So, and if it may not work out, but then again later on we'll go, Krishna, you were there. It did work out in this way because I was meant to learn this. So we always seek, what am I trying to learn from this particular position? But it's not that we should give up. We should never give up. There's always going to be difficulties in devotional service. There's always going to be stuff that goes on. There's always going to be politics. It's always going to, dampen our enthusiasm. But we need to understand, are we attached to Krishna or are we attached to the results that come from devotional service? And if we're attached to the results that come from devotional service, our determination will be shaky. But if we're just attached to pleasing Krishna, then our determination is fixed. That's why in the last verse of Shikshastakam that we chant, Krishna, you may handle me roughly with your embrace, but you will be my Lord birth after birth. Why? What does that mean? The rough embrace is all this stuff that happens to, persuade us, give up. But you say, that's fine. Rough embrace can come. It doesn't matter. As long as I'm serving you, Krishna, it doesn't matter. So that's the mood we take. And then we can be fixed. Nothing will upset us in our endeavors. So I think we'll finish there. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Shri Radha Gopinath ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Dai Go Premanande Haribo.